Do not point at me. State the policy number, now. Overbook is 0. Log every move.
Chicago, 8:14 de la tarde. A 5-star lobby, marble desk, phones buzzing. He places his ID and a confirmed reservation number. The receptionist slides it back. We're full. Guests only. He doesn't argue. Which policy? Show me the clause. Camera on the PMS screen. His suite appears, then an override, no vacancy, time stamped. She taps the intercom, security to front. He says 4 words, please log everything. 1 quiet call, ops, mirror lobby cams, and save terminal activity. So Ben, way. Stay with this, because in minutes, the system will speak, the truth will print, and 3 moves will land. Terminate, freeze, log. Chicago at 8:01, 4 p.m. The lobby hums with arrivals and tuxedo chatter. Chandeliers throw even light across a wide marble desk. A guest sets down his driver's license and the printed confirmation with a calm hand. The number is clear and the time of arrival is inside the window. His voice stays level as he states that he booked the governor's suite under the corporate rate. The receptionist glances at the screen. Her cursor pauses over the profile and the reservation tile opens. The status reads, guaranteed for late arrival. She does not announce that. She returns the ID with 2 fingers and says the property is at capacity and the desk is handling guests only. Eyes shift nearby as the word only lands a little too hard. He does not raise his tone. He asks for the policy reference that would justify refusing a confirmed reservation. The camera of a bystander drifts toward the monitor. The property management system fills the frame. The suite is visible on the grid. The modifier keys flash as the supervisor account opens an override panel. Now the screen refreshes. The label changes to no vacancy and a timestamp appears in the audit trail. The field shows the user ID of the supervisor on duty. Next to it, a reason code reads, VIP accommodation reallocated. The bellman at the far end hears the soft beep and looks up. He is Jamal. His gaze moves from the guest to the screen and then to the shift lead. The supervisor steps closer and activates the intercom. Her voice requests security to the front desk for verification of a possible trespass. Several guests look over. Someone lowers a cocktail to see better. The room is not loud. It is the practiced quiet of a place that sells discretion. The guest stays still and keeps one hand on the confirmation page. He asks for the printed clause that supports the new decision. He requests that the desk log every action on the terminal. The phrasing is simple. Log everything. The receptionist hesitates and then continues to type. The audit trail collects another line with the same user ID and the same timestamp bracket. He makes 1 call. He does not step back. He asks operations to mirror the lobby cameras to storage and to save terminal activity from the moment he places his ID on the counter. He adds that the security channel should be recorded and preserved. His tone is plain. People nearby hear only the instructions and the time. Jamal edges closer. He saw the suite as available seconds earlier. He saw the override, switch it to blocked. He looks at the guest again. He looks at the confirmation number again. He chooses to speak up in a careful voice that carries. He says the suite 2801 shows confirmed under the owner rate and that it was visible on his screen less than a minute ago. Security arrives and stands by the planter. They do not touch anyone. The supervisor asks for the ID to be held for verification. The guest declines and reminds the desk that the document should remain in his possession until a lawful request is made by management or law enforcement. He is steady. He is not performing. He is auditing. A slideshow for the gala rotates on the bar projector. Logos of the parent company drift past with sponsor names and board silhouettes. A familiar outline appears in one frame and a couple at the bar trade looks. The receptionist pretends not to see the screen. She doubles down and attempts a second override. The clock on the PMS reads 8:16 p.m. The lobby camera catches the key events in sequence. ID placed. Reservation presented. Override executed. Intercom called. 1 phone call was made. The story is now in the system. The guest lets the seconds work for him. He waits for the system to speak. Operations picks up on the first ring. The guest states the time, the location, and the request in 12 words. Mirror lobby cams. Preserve terminal inputs. Tag audio from the intercom channel. A short yes returns. He ends the call and rests the phone beside the confirmation. Silence returns to the desk like a held breath. The supervisor tries to reclaim the stage. She asks a second time to hold the ID. He declines again and asks for the printed policy that allows property staff to seize identification from a paying guest without police present. The phrasing is even. He adds 1 more request. Note in the log that the desk refused a guaranteed reservation. The receptionist keeps typing. The cursor twitches. The audit trail grows another line. Jamal shifts from the bell stand to within clear earshot. He is careful. He keeps both hands visible. He addresses the guest as Sir and repeats what he saw. Suite 2801 showed as available and assigned under the owner rate at 814. The override moved it to be blocked under the supervisor login. He points at the tiny question mark icon on the PMS that opens the reason code glossary. It defines reallocated as moved to a non-revenue guest with managerial approval. Jamal stops there. He has said enough. Two guests at the lobby sofa angle their phones to frame the monitor. One of them zooms on the timestamp ribbon. The bar projector keeps rolling a quiet slide deck for the gala sponsors. A frame appears with the parent company crest and the property list under it. The lobby seems to notice and then pretends not to. The front desk acts as if that screen is not there. Security receives the intercom call and arrives. They take a position near the planters between the ropes. Their stance is neutral. The supervisor nods to them as if a threat has been contained. The guest does not move. He turns the printed confirmation so that the barcode faces outward. He asks the desk to scan it again. He asks for the audit trail to be printed to paper and attached to his check-in file. He says, "This is for compliance." The word lands. The receptionist scans the barcode. The screen pings and the reservation tile reopens. Status still shows guarantee. The suite field reads assigned and then flickers to housekeeping hold and then back to blocked. The supervisor leans closer and completes a second override. The audit trail prints the action with the same user ID and a time delta of 41 seconds. Jamal watches this in real time and his face tightens. He speaks once more and says the override conflicts with service standards and that he wishes to notify a manager. Before the supervisor can respond, a ringtone rings from the back office and a manager badge appears at the side door. It is the director of operations called by the earlier phone. He walks in without announcement. He greets no one. He steps behind the desk and reads the audit trail with one finger on the screen to keep place. He asks a single question. Which clause did you apply? The supervisor says the hotel is full and that the guest is not on the VIP list. The director asks for the policy citation. The receptionist does not answer. The director of operations looks to Jamal. Jamal states the facts again. He describes the suite showing as available. He reads the owner rate code from the screen. He points at the override reason. He stops again. The director nods once and asks the supervisor to step into the back office for 2 minutes. She refuses and says security should remove the guest. The director of operations says no one is being removed and that the system will decide. The projector at the bar widens to a new slide that previews the evening program. Names of board members appear as silhouettes with titles. A couple of guests whisper while watching. The guest at the desk does not turn to look. He requests that the director witness the new scan of the confirmation and the reprint of the audit trail. The director agrees. The receptionist scans. The PMS reloads and throws a warning. Duplicate override detected for assigned inventory. The director reads it out loud so the camera phones pick it up. He asks for the printers to be fed. The receptionist tears a short stack and places it on the desk with a shaking motion she tries to hide. The guest asks for one more action. Save the intercom audio and attach it to the case file. The director nods. He radios engineering to archive the channel from 813 to 818. The engineer confirms by text and a tiny icon flashes on the back monitor to show the clip is saving to the compliance folder. The guest thanks him. He adds that he will wait until the system finishes writing. He does not ask for an apology. He asks for order. Security remains at ease. The watching crowd shifts from curiosity to patience. The lobby feels like a courtroom that has not been called into session yet. The minutes stretch, but each line of the log is another plank in a bridge. The governor's suite still exists. The barcode still resolves to a reservation. The only variable is the choice of a single login. The system is almost ready to speak. The director of operations opens a service laptop and signs into the admin console. The lobby monitor reflects the glow as he requests a live audit view. He reads each line aloud for clarity. 8, 14, 15. The reservation tile opened. 8, 14, 42. Override from supervisor login, reason code reallocated. 8, 15, 23. Intercom, request for security. 8, 1604. Second override from the same login. The receptionist stiffens. The supervisor in the back office doorway folds her arms but stays in sight. The guest stands at the same place with the confirmation page facing outward. He asks to verify identity in a different way. Not a photo discussion, not a VIP list. He asks the director to check the W-9 archive tied to the parent company and to match the last 4 digits of the corporate tax ID with the owner rate memo attached to his profile. It is a plain request. It requires no show, The director types. The match returns. He nods once. Phones around the lobby stop moving. The crowd senses that the conversation just shifted from opinion to fact. The director asks the receptionist to print the profile memo and staple it to the audit trail. He thanks Jamal for standing by and asks him to scan the physical ID with the back scanner to ensure the barcode and the name align with the booking. Jamal scans quickly and sets the ID back on the marble without a flourish. The scanner neck light goes green. He says the name matches. He adds that the loyalty number maps to the owner rate. The supervisor tries a new angle. She claims risk and mentions chargeback exposure. She says the credit card on file is different. The guest answers with a single line. The corporate card on file ends with the digits he knows. He asks the director to retrieve the token reference rather than the masked printout. The admin console spits the token map. The ending digits match his statement. The director reads them and the time on the last successful authorization, 8:12 p.m. The room absorbs the detail. A ringtone cuts through again. Legal is now on speaker from headquarters. The director summarizes the facts in less than 20 seconds. Confirmed reservation. 2 overrides by the same supervisor login. Intercom call labeling a guest as trespass. Profile memo confirming owner rate. Token match for card on file. Legal asks a question that lands with weight. Did anyone attempt to seize identification? The director says the request was made twice and declined. Legal reminds the group of state law on guest documents and of company policy, which prohibits holding IDs without police, and a written incident report. Legal asks if intercom audio is being preserved. The engineer confirms by text, and the director repeats the confirmation for the record. The bar projector cycles to the sponsor loop again. A slide arrives that lists the parent company properties by city. The hotel name in bold sits between 2 sister hotels. A photo of the board silhouettes returns. One of the watching guests connects the dots and lowers his phone. He looks at the guest with a new expression and then looks away. No one says it aloud. The guest makes a compact request. Please add to the log that I requested a rescan after each override. Please add that I requested policy citations by number, not by summary. Please mark that Jamal provided factual observations from the live screen. The director instructs the receptionist to enter the notes. She types. The log grows. Security shifts weight near the planter but stays in neutral posture. The director turns to the supervisor. He asks about the approval behind the reallocated reason code. She says managerial discretion. He asks who gave it. She says she did. He asks for the specific clause. She cites a VIP accommodation priority that allows room moves when the hotel is overbooked. He asks whether the hotel is overbooked tonight by the system count. She does not answer. He pulls the overbook report. 0 overbook. He holds the screen where all can see. The lobby air changes again. Jamal speaks one more time. He says the governor's suite has been clean and ready since 1800. Housekeeping flagged it completed in the system with a double check at 1922. The director nods and asks housekeeping over the radio to confirm the status. Housekeeping states are clean and inspected ready. It is not a program error. It is a choice. The guest remains still. He does not ask for a gesture. He asks for an outcome. He asks the director to proceed under standards. He asks for the suite to be issued, the audit to continue in parallel, and the preservation of all media until compliance releases it. He adds a final line. I am here for standards. The director meets his eyes and says, understood. The receptionist prints a new key envelope and hesitates before handing it over. The director takes the keys instead and sets them to the side for a moment. He opens a new session on the admin console and prepares an action that will matter in the next minute. The room waits for the next instruction. The system is ready to render the first consequence. The director of operations lifts the admin laptop so the screen faces the desk and the people nearest the rope line. He requests screen share to the bar projector. The slide deck blinks away and the audit console fills the wall. A thin progress bar sweeps across. Lines of text appear crisp in white on black. Login, action, reason, time. The lobby sees exactly what the terminals recorded. He reads each line in a steady voice. At 8:14:15, the reservation opened. At 8:14:42, the supervisor login executed override 1 with reason reallocated. At 8:16:04, the same login executed override 2. The system shows the terminal number. It matches the station where the receptionist is typing. The director asks engineering to freeze that terminal session. The engineer confirms. The receptionist loses input control. The keyboard light dies. The crowd does not cheer. It simply settles. The supervisor steps from the doorway and says it was a judgment call. The director asks for the basis of judgment in policy language. She repeats VIP accommodation priority. He asks for the overbook number to justify moving a guaranteed suite. The projector shows the overbook report. It reads 0. He taps the arrow key. The PMS now shows housekeeping inspection logs for the governor suite, ready at 1922. No conflicts. He asks the supervisor if she still stands by the reason code. She does not answer. Legal speaks through the phone again. Please confirm whether any derogatory label was applied to the profile. The director scrolls the audit of comments. There is a line entered at 8:15 that marks the guest as potential fraud. He asks who entered it. The user ID is the same as the override ID. The lobby watches the cursor circle it. Legal instructs him to preserve the comment history, identity of the user, and the machine ID for HR and compliance. The guest does not move. He asks that a copy of the preserved audit be attached to the guest's folio for full transparency. He asks that the intercom clip be appended. He requests that any alteration to the audit after this moment be reported as a separate incident. The director agrees and repeats the requests for the record. Engineering flags the file immutable, and a small padlock icon appears on the projector. Security maintains distance. Their presence is proof of process, not force. The director turns to the supervisor and requests her badge. She says she is being targeted. He says the system is being protected. He states the finding in plain language: 2 overrides without overbook, a false reason code, a derogatory label applied to a confirmed guest, an attempted ID hold without legal basis. He ends with a procedural step: access suspension pending investigation. He calls IT and reads the user ID. A window opens on the projector. Account status changes to locked, effective immediately. The supervisor exhales through her nose and looks at the floor. Jamal is still at his post. The director thanks him for specific, factual statements tied to timestamps. He notes this in the log. Jamal nods once. The director then picks up the key folder and holds it between index and thumb. He looks back at the screen. He taps a new tab: property comp, inventory, and staff benefits. He asks legal to confirm authority to freeze non-revenue assignments for the next 14 days at this location while audit completes. Legal confirms the authority under the Ethics and Service Standards Clause. The director selects freeze. The toggle turns red on the projector. The lobby absorbs the meaning without sound. The guest asks to proceed with the check-in while the system continues its work. He requests that the suite be issued, that bell service be offered if desired, and that all subsequent calls occur away from the front desk to reduce disruption to other guests. He adds a sentence that sets tone: "We will let the record carry the weight." The director nods. He issues the key with a deliberate motion and sets the folio to print. The receptionist tries to speak. The director raises a hand and asks her to read the policy citations for ID handling and refusal of service allowed to the lobby for training purposes. She reads the first clause that says staff may not hold government identification, absent law enforcement, and a written incident report. She reads the second clause that says guaranteed reservations must be honored unless an uncontrollable event prevents it, and that any move requires a documented equivalent accommodation. The words are not dramatic, they are clear. A printer hums. The folio and the audit bundle arrive with the perforation still warm. The director places them in a simple folder. He hands the key and the folder to the guest and says that the suite is ready and that staff are instructed to remain professional and that the audit will continue in the background without delay to service. The guest thanks him and adds a short line: "Standards matter because people do." He turns and pauses one step away from the desk. He does not look back at the projector. He does not address the crowd. He simply says for the microphones and the log that preservation is active, that user access is locked, and that a recertification plan will be presented before the end of week. Then he walks toward the elevators. Behind him, the system keeps writing. The elevator doors close and the lobby sound dims to a hush. The guest stands with the key folder and the audit bundle under his palm. He does not speak until the bell tone marks floor 28. In the hall, he pauses, turns the key, and steps into the suite. The room is clean and quiet. He sets the folder on the desk and calls operations back. His request is specific: open a case file, assign an incident number, and invite compliance, HR, and training to a brief within 15 minutes. He adds that housekeeping and bell will not be delayed. Service must proceed as normal. There is a soft knock. Jamal stands at the door with the luggage cart and a single envelope. He does not enter without being asked. The guest thanks him and asks him to leave the cart by the door. He invites Jamal in for 1 minute to witness a short record entry. The phone is on speaker. Operations greets Jamal by name and notes his presence. The guest states that Jamal provided factual statements tied to timestamps and that no instruction was given to interfere with any colleague. He asks that Jamal's statements be preserved in the case file as observations, not accusations. Jamal says yes, sir, and steps back toward the door. Operations patches legal and compliance into the call. The guest asks for a single screen in the suite to mirror the admin console. A small monitor by the desk pairs and the case file opens. He requests the formal triad. Terminate where access violates standards. Freeze non-revenue privileges during audit. Log every action with immutable flags until closure. Legal reads back each step for the record. Access for the supervisor remains locked. Comp nights and staff benefits are frozen for 14 days pending review. Audit assets, including intercom audio and projector feed logs, are archived with hash verification. The monitor shows green checks as each task completes. He makes room for service. Housekeeping radios that turn down can be scheduled for later. Bell offers to hang garments. He declines, both with thanks. He asks Bell to note that service offered and declined, so the record reflects normal hospitality. He then instructs compliance to draft a recertification plan for the front desk team. The plan will cover ID handling, reservation guarantees, override reasons, and bias mitigation tied to measurable outcomes. He requests a training window within 14 days, with attendance tracked and linked to system logins. Compliance agrees and places a calendar hold for the following Wednesday. Operations asks how to address the lobby guests who filmed. The guest says no one is to be challenged for recording in a public space of the hotel. He asks PR to prepare a statement that centers standards without names. He includes one sentence that matters. We are here for safe and equitable service, not spectacle. He asks PR to hold the statement until audit concludes, unless a safety issue requires immediate guidance. There is another knock. The director of operations steps in with a sealed envelope and the incident printouts for the guest to sign as acknowledgement of receipt. The guest reads each page without commentary. He signs where requested and asks the director to read a short acknowledgement aloud for the case file. The director does so. He acknowledges that overrides were executed without overbook, that a derogatory label was applied, and that an ID hold was requested without legal basis. He states that access is locked and an internal investigation has started. He adds that all staff are expected to treat guests with dignity. The guest thanks him. He asks about Jamal's role. The director says Jamal reported facts and maintained service posture. The guest requests that Jamal be scheduled for a provisional shift lead shadow on the next rotation and that he receive credit in his personnel file for professional conduct. HR marks the note in the live system. The guest does not turn this into a moment. He simply says, good work should be documented. Operations offers to comp the night. He declines. He asks that the booked corporate rate remain and that any remediation be directed to staff training and guest experience safeguards. He requests a follow-up package for the board, summarizing the audit with anonymized data and policy references. The director nods and sets a due date by end of week. Before the director leaves, the guest places a slender badge on the desk and turns it so the parent company crest faces up. He does not announce it. He asks one final question for the record. Do we need anything else to meet the standard? The director answers no. The systems are preserved. The team has instructions. The guest says thank you. He ends the call and the room returns to quiet. He stands by the window and watches the city for a moment. No speech, no victory lap. The outcome is the point. A suite issued without drama. An audit in motion. A team was reminded that policy is not a prop. He opens the folder and reads the incident number again. Then he closes it, sets it on the desk, and lets the system keep writing. The suite is quiet, but the case file is not. The mirrored console shows a new tab opening as compliance begins the preliminary interview from a conference room on the mezzanine. The director of operations sits at the far end of that table with a legal pad. The supervisor is present with HR. The recording icon glows red. The guest does not join the interview. He lets the process move without his voice. Compliance reads the scope. Time frame 8:12 to 8:20. Systems involved: PMS, intercom, projector input, security channel. Questions will be limited to facts and policy. HR confirms that participation is required and that retaliation is prohibited. The supervisor nods, arms crossed, eyes on the table. The first question is simple. Why was one executed? She says the lobby was busy and a VIP needed the suite. Compliance asks for the overbook number and the approval trail. She cannot cite either. The console in the suite echoes the gap with a silent line on the log. Next question. Who is the VIP? She uses a first name only. Compliance asks for documentation. There is none. The director turns a page on the legal pad. He reads a clause that any non-revenue assignment must be coded with the full name and event ID or vendor record. The supervisor looks at HR. HR writes the reminder into the interview log and asks the supervisor to answer. She says she thought it would be fine for one night. The word thought lands like a loose wire. Compliance plays the intercom clip between 8:14 and 8:16. The room hears the call for security, for possible trespass. Legal pauses the audio and asks if any observation of threatening behavior had been made. The director says no. HR notes that the language does not meet the safety threshold. Compliance asks the supervisor to explain the label potential fraud. She says she had a feeling. Legal states that feelings are not a reason code and that labels must be supported by data. The projector in the suite shows the interview note aligned with the policy index. Jamal is invited in for 2 minutes as a factual witness. He arrives in uniform, hands visible, and reads from the printout he made for himself after his shift was covered. He confirms the times of the suite status, the appearance of the override window, and the fact that the guest requested a printout of the audit trail. He does not add an opinion. He does not mention anyone by name except his own. HR thanks him and asks if he experienced pressure to cover a colleague. He says no. He is dismissed with appreciation and is told a separate development conversation will be scheduled this week. Security provides their peace. They never made contact. They were staged and waiting. They did not see a threat. Their body cameras were running and the clips have already been uploaded to the file. Compliance tags the files with hash values. The suite monitor shows green check marks as evidence locks. The interview moves to remediation. Compliance states that access has been locked and non-revenue benefits are frozen for review. HR outlines the steps of a fair process. The supervisor will have an opportunity to submit a written statement and any supporting emails or texts that might explain the decision. A review panel will convene with a manager from another property to avoid bias. The outcome could include termination or corrective action short of termination depending on evidence. The supervisor asks if this is already decided. HR says, outcomes follow facts. The room goes quiet. Downstairs, the lobby returns to a normal rhythm. The projector rolls back to the gala loop. The desk answers routine questions and checks in late arrivals. Guests move past the planter without noticing the earlier line. The system work continues, but service does not stall. That balance is the point. In the suite, the guest drafts a short note to the board on his phone. He lists 4 lines. Confirmed reservation obstructed by override without overbook. Derogatory label entered without basis. Attempted ID hold contrary to policy and state law. Operations acted promptly to lock access, freeze non-revenue, and preserve evidence. He ends with planned steps. Recertification within 14 days, quarterly audits of overrides, spotlight training for frontline leadership, recognition pathway for staff who surface facts early, operations pings to confirm the training calendar. A template appears with 3 sessions scheduled to cover policy citations, bias mitigation with case study, and technical drill on the PMS reason code menu. Attendance will tie to login credentials. No session, no credentials. The guest approves it with a single word, approved. He closes the console mirror and looks at the key in his hand. He has not raised his voice once. He has not demanded a gesture. The file will carry the weight. The next steps are simple: sleep, then a morning walk through a breakfast service with a quiet eye on standards. The city hums outside the glass while the system keeps writing. Morning brings a clear view of the lake and a cleaner ledger. At 7:12 a.m., the guest rides down and steps into the breakfast room. The floor manager greets without flourish and offers a seat near an outlet. He declines service beyond coffee and watches the room like a quiet audit. Servers reset tables at even intervals. A host resolves a double seat politely. Nothing showy, just order. Operations arrives with a slim folder. Overnight actions are stamped complete. Access for the supervisor remains locked. HR has issued a written notice of investigation. Non-revenue assignments are frozen for 14 days, and the exception report has been widened to catch any manual comp attempt. The guest initializes the page and asks a simple question. How will it override work from today forward? The answer is specific. Dual authorization for any reallocated code. If the system sees reallocations tied to a guaranteed booking, it stops the action and requires a second manager login plus a typed policy citation box that cannot be left blank. Engineering added a timer to prevent rushed clicks. He walks the buffet with operations while regulars read news and business travelers check flights. Systems at the back of the house hum. The coffee brewer logs batch numbers to a small screen. The hostess screen shows room counts and expected covers. He is not inspecting food, he is checking rhythm. A server steps in front of a child near a tray and the tray does not fall. Quiet competence. He notes it and moves on. At 7:26 HR pings. The supervisor has provided a short written statement. She admits the overrides in the intercom call, claims a misunderstood VIP commitment, provides no written approval. Legal replies with the policy excerpts already quoted in the lobby and confirms that none apply. HR schedules a panel with an external manager and a union rep where applicable. The guest reads the scheduling note and closes it. He is not part of the panel. He does not need to be. Jamal reports for an early shadow as provisional shift lead. He is steady. Operations issues him a temporary login with limited permissions and a checklist for open and close. He is instructed to call out any irregularity without naming colleagues. He nods once. The guest watches him greet a family, checking out and solve a folio split in less than a minute, including printing itemized breakfast lines and attaching a digital receipt. Nothing cinematic, just evidence. Compliance publishes the research schedule to every front desk inbox. 3 sessions, each 90 minutes. ID handling and state law. Guaranteed reservation rules and equivalent accommodation standards. PMS, technical drill with reason, code definitions, and live practice on a dummy tenant. Attendance will be tied to login reactivation at the end of the window. No session, no credentials. Training materials include anonymized screenshots from last night with timestamps. The guest approves the material with a single word, proceed. PR submits a 1-paragraph holding line for internal use. It avoids names and adjectives. It states that a guest was impeded by a non-compliant override, that access was locked, that benefits were frozen pending audit, and that training has been scheduled. It reaffirms a commitment to equitable service and lawful handling of guest identification. It instructs staff not to interfere with lawful recording in common areas. The guest approves it as written and asks that no external post be made unless a reporter calls. Standards, not theater. Engineering pushes the last 2 changes. Intercom audio now auto-archives to compliance without a manual tap. Projector inputs in public spaces cannot mirror terminals unless a manager badge is tapped and a 2-word reason is logged. The admin console shows green checks. A maintenance ticket closes with a hash link. By 8:05, the breakfast room settles. The guest asks for a check even though the room includes breakfast. He wants a record. He signs and leaves a cash tip with the time written under his initials for the log. On the way out, he stops at the bell stand. He thanks Jamal for facts, not drama, and says a development conversation is on his calendar. Jamal says thank you and returns to the desk. The moment is small and exact. He walks through the lobby once more. The projector runs a neutral slide. No faces, no silhouettes. The front desk has a printed policy binder open to ID handling. The new dual authorization prompt sits on the receptionist screen, waiting for the next person who thinks reason is a shortcut. Security is present, but at the perimeter. Calm. The guest checks the case file a final time before heading to a morning meeting across town. The ledger shows what matters. Suite delivered, evidence preserved, access terminated where needed, benefits frozen while facts are reviewed. Training scheduled with teeth. A staff member who told the truth set to rise. He closes the folder and pockets the key. The hotel returns to ordinary service. The system keeps writing. The lesson is not about a scene. It is about standards that will outlast a single night. By mid-morning, the night audit closes and the real pattern starts to surface. Operations sends a quiet note to finance. Pull a 90-day extract of reallocated reason codes tied to guaranteed bookings, grouped by user ID and terminal. The report lands at 1006. It is not long, but it is loud. The same supervisor login appears 12 times in 6 weeks, with 3 instances labeled VIP accommodation reallocated during sold-out periods that were not actually overbooked. The terminal IDs match the front left station. The time clusters align with late check-in windows after 8 p.m. Finance flags the file for escalation. Compliance widens the lens. They query staff, comp usage, vendor rooms, and barter credits. A second report lands. The supervisor approved 2 non-revenue assignments to a personal email domain that does not match any vendor list. The CRM shows no record for those names. The booking notes are empty. The system cannot find an event ID. Legal adds both instances to the case file and marks them under benefits freeze review. Nothing accusatory, just dates, logins, and reasons. IT checks communications around the override times. They do not read private messages. They look at metadata. A repeating pattern of calls to a single number appears minutes before the override windows, all outbound from the desk phone. The number traces to a prepaid line, IT notes it and stops there. The finding is listed as context, not conclusion. The goal is standards, not theater. The guest meets a board member across town at a small conference room. He lays out 4 pages. Line 1, obstruction of a guaranteed reservation by override without overbook. Line 2, derogatory label applied without basis. Line 3, attempted ID hold contrary to state law and policy. Line 4, a pattern of non-revenue usage without proper documentation. He proposes the response structure. Internal investigation with a neutral manager on the panel. Immediate recertification with attendance tied to login. Quarterly override audits owned by compliance. A staff recognition path for fact keepers. The board member reads, asks 2 questions about cost and timeline, and approves the framework. Back at the hotel, HR schedules the supervisor for a second interview with representation present. They also open a separate thread for any staff who want to submit observations confidentially. 2 notes arrive within an hour. Both describe pressure to move certain reservations last minute with verbal references to friends of staff. The notes are dated and signed. HR adds them to the file. The tone remains careful. The words stay inside facts. Engineering pushes a small but significant change to the PMS. Every time reallocated is selected, a modal asks the user to type the policy citation and attach a digital approval from a second manager. Without both fields, the action cannot post. The modal also displays the overbook number in real time. If it reads 0, the screen warns in red. Screenshots go into the training deck. The change is not dramatic. It is precise. PR drafts a staff memo for internal channels only. It explains the new dual authorization, the freeze on non-revenue assignments during the audit window, and the expectation that lawful recording by guests in public spaces is not to be challenged. It reiterates that ID handling must follow state law without exception. The memo includes a short paragraph about dignity as the first metric of luxury. The guest approves it and asks that department heads read it aloud at pre-shift. Jamal finishes his shadow block and meets with operations for 10 minutes. They discuss the difference between calling out facts and calling out people, how to document observations, and when to escalate. He receives a simple checklist card that lives in his pocket: verify, cite, preserve. He asks 1 question about how to handle pushback from a peer. Operations answers with clarity, use the system, point to timestamps, avoid adjectives, stay in the policy lane. He nods. Compliance circles back with a plan for recertification. 3 sessions across 2 weeks, each with a short exam. Passing score required for login reactivation. Anyone who fails twice will complete a one-on-one coaching with a training lead from a sister property. Results will be logged and reviewed by HR for annual evaluations. The system ties skills to access, not intention. That is the lesson. In the afternoon, the guest returns to the property through a side entrance. No crowd, no camera phones. He checks the case file on a staff terminal with the director standing beside him. The file shows evidence preserved, access locked where appropriate, benefits frozen for review, training scheduled and linked to credentials, and a developing record of staff who anchored the process with facts. He asks about service scores and guest feedback from last night. Operations shows a normal curve, no noise. That matters. Fixing a system without harming the guest experience is the craft. He thanks the director and asks 1 steady question. What else do we need to meet standard? The director says the only gap left is a clear playbook for busy nights that prevents ad hoc decisions. They will draft it by tomorrow with a flow chart for overbook procedures and a lane for VIP handling that never collides with guaranteed reservations. The guest nods. The tools are in place. The habit is next. He leaves the desk as quietly as he arrived. No speech, no press. The log will do the talking. The audit is not about blame. It is about building a structure that makes the right move the easy move. The system keeps writing. By late afternoon, the review panel convenes in a small conference room off the mezzanine. The door remains open. A neutral manager from a sister property sits beside HR and legal. The director of operations provides the record copy. The recording light turns red. The supervisor arrives with representation. The panel states scope and standard. Facts first. Policy citations precise. No speculation. They begin with the timeline. At 8:14:15, the reservation opened. At 8:14:42, override 1, posted under the supervisor, login with reason reallocated. At 8:16:04, override 2, posted under the same login. The overbook report for the night reads 0. Housekeeping inspection log shows the suite ready at 19:22. Intercom audio labels the guest as a possible trespass. The panel asks if any threat was observed. Security says no. The record stands. They move to the reason code. The panel asks for the VIP approval trail. The supervisor cannot produce names, event IDs, or emails. Finance introduces the 90-day extract. 12 reallocated entries cluster around late check-in windows with the same login. 2 non-revenue approvals route to a personal email not on any vendor file. IT shows the desk phone call pattern to a prepaid line minutes before overrides. The panel notes that metadata is context, not conclusion. The evidence is the PMS audit and the absence of required documentation. The supervisor offers a statement. She says she believes she was maintaining flexibility for the hotel and that regulars expected special handling. Legal reminds the room that guaranteed reservations are not flexible inventory and that VIP accommodation priority cannot displace a confirmed assignment absent overbook and equivalent accommodation with documentation. The sister property manager reads the clause number slowly. HR asks if the supervisor received training on this section during last year's recert. The system shows yes and a passing score. The panel notes completion date. Jamal is invited to repeat his observations. He states times, fields, and what flickered on screen. He avoids adjectives. The panel thanks him. They ask whether he felt pressure to keep silent. He answers no. They ask whether he was instructed to label the guest. He answers no. He returns to the desk. Compliance attaches body camera clips from security and the intercom audio hash verification. Everything aligns. The panel asks the supervisor about the attempted hold of ID. She acknowledges the request. Legal cites state law and company policy prohibiting staff from holding government identification absent law enforcement and written incident report. The panel marks the finding. No debate, just a rule. Before concluding, the panel checks service continuity. Operations reports that check-ins proceeded, guest scores remained in the normal range, and breakfast service ran clean. The goal was met: correct the system without colliding with hospitality. The guest is not in the room. He does not need to be. The standard speaks. The panel breaks for 10 minutes and returns with decisions. Access remains locked for the supervisor. HR will issue termination for cause pending final sign-off by legal with the right to respond in writing within 24 hours included in the packet. Non-revenue benefits remain frozen for the property for 14 days, and any comp night during the window requires regional approval. Finance will reconcile the 2 unsupported non-revenue stays and seek reimbursement if applicable. IT will retire the prepaid contact number from any internal call lists and flag similar patterns in monthly reports. Compliance will widen the override audit to 3 sister properties to ensure this pattern is not localized. For the front desk as a whole, login reactivation will hinge on recert completion and a score threshold. A new control goes live tonight. Any reallocated attempt against a guaranteed booking triggers a hard stop that displays the overbook count and forces a second manager to enter a clause number from the policy library. The system will reject free text. A nightly digest will summarize all attempts and outcomes to the regional VP. The intercom now auto-archives to compliance by default. Projector mirroring requires a manager badge and a typed reason. These are not theatrics. They are rails. The panel enters one more line. Recognition. Jamal's factual reporting under time pressure will be logged as commendable conduct. Operations will place him on a 30-day development path toward permanent shift lead status, including 2 cross trainings and a practical exam. HR adds the note to his file with the date and the case number. The supervisor's representative asks if there is any path short of termination. HR answers that policy allows corrective action when evidence suggests misunderstanding without impact. In this file, the evidence shows deliberate overrides without overbook, unsupported VIP claims, a derogatory label applied to a confirmed guest, and an attempted ID hold contrary to policy and law. Impact is clear. Due process will be respected, but standards are not negotiable. The meeting closes. The panel signs the findings. Copies route to the case file, to regional leadership, and to the board packet the guest requested. Downstairs, the lobby holds its even tone. The projector shows neutral artwork. A family asks about pool hours. A flight crew rolls in and gets keys in under 2 minutes. The hotel does what hotels are meant to do. Upstairs, the guest reads the decisions on his screen. He does not change a word. He types 1 line for the record. Proceed under standards. Then he closes the file, pockets the key, and heads for a late check on housekeeping rounds. The night that tried to slip past, policy has been brought back inside the lines. The system keeps writing. Evening settles over the property with a cleaner playbook and fewer guesses. At 6:02 p.m., the first research session begins in a small ballroom set classroom style. A training lead from a sister property opens with statutes and policy citations on screen. No adjectives, just law, clause numbers, and practical drills. Every attendee signs in with badge and login. Attendance writes straight to the credential system, passing score, or no credentials. The rule is plain. The module walks the floor team through real prompts. A guaranteed reservation attempts to move under reallocated. The system displays overbook equals 0. The trainee must either cancel the action or enter a valid clause and secure a second manager's approval. The practice terminal refuses free text and stamps the attempt with a warning. The training lead pauses and asks the group to read the clause out loud. Eyes go down to policy, not up to opinion. The room gets quieter as staff begin to understand that the rails are not optional. Upstairs, the guest reviews the nightly digest draft. It will email at midnight to regional leadership and the board. The template is concise. Count of attempted overrides, count approved with proper dual authorization and clause numbers, count rejected by system, intercom archives saved, any ID handling incidents. It includes a section titled Facts and Fixes, no names, only roles and actions. He approves it with one word, send. HR finalizes the notice to the supervisor. Termination for cause pending the standard right to respond in writing within 24 hours. A neutral manager witnesses delivery. The letter lists findings in the same order the panel read them. Overrides without overbook. Unsupported VIP claim. Derogatory label. Attempted hold of identification. It states that benefits were frozen pending review and that 2 non-revenue stays will be reconciled. It cites the policy library and state law where applicable. It does not editorialize. The Director of Operations compiles a front desk playbook for busy nights. The flow begins at real-time overbook check. If overbook equals 0, reallocated is off limits for guaranteed reservations. If greater than 0, a tree opens for equivalent accommodation of equal or higher category with approval and documentation. A side path covers VIP requests and requires event ID or vendor record before any inventory move. The last page lists who to call in which order when pressure arrives. It is a map that prevents improvisation from becoming harm. In the lobby, Jamal works through his first evening as a provisional shift lead. He calls a team huddle and reads the 2 clauses on ID handling and guaranteed reservations. Then he assigns positions for the high arrival block and adds one small instruction. If anything feels off, stop the action and read the policy number aloud. He does not point at anyone, he points at the binder. The tone is steady. The team steps back behind the desk and the line begins to move. PR rolls out the internal memo during pre-shift. Managers read it aloud, line by line. Lawful recording in public areas is not to be challenged. ID handling follows state law without exception. Dual authorization for reallocated attempts is live. Comp assignments remain frozen pending audit. A paragraph on dignity closes the note. Luxury is measured by how safe and seen guests feel, not by how quiet we can make a problem. Staff sign the read receipt, the words anchor, then the shift proceeds. Engineering watches the new controls in live time. A dashboard blinks once when a reallocated attempt hits the hard stop. The user reads the warning and cancels. The system logs the canceled attempt as learning, not failure. The dashboard stays green, intercom clips roll to compliance without delay, the projector refuses any mirror session without a manager, badge, and typed reason. A bartender tries to test it and the screen politely declines. The bar laughs and goes back to work. That is the point. The control becomes normal. The guest walks the public spaces one more time. The lobby tone is even. A couple of late arrivals check in under a storm of flight delays. They get keys and clear instructions in under 2 minutes. A family asks for extra towels and receives a text with an ETA. Security is present but outside the scene. The hotel looks like a hotel again, not a stage. Operations catches the guest near the elevators and asks if he wants a quiet exit. He nods and sets an early checkout for the morning. He will leave before the first training session of the day and let the system carry the narrative. He asks for one last metric. How many staff signed up for recert voluntarily beyond the required slot? The answer is more than half. That number matters. Back in the suite, he writes a short note to the team. Thank you for getting back to standard fast. Thank you for choosing policy over personality. Keep the rails tight, elevate facts, recognize the people who speak up. He adds a line for Jamal that HR will formalize later. Provisional becomes permanent if the development plan stays on track for 30 days. He hits send and sets the phone face down. The city runs along the window. No speech, no noise. The heavy lift happened in the quiet spaces between screens and signatures. A room issued without drama, an audit with teeth, a fix that will outlast the week. He turns off the console mirror. The logs will keep going without him. The standard is in place. The building breathes. The system keeps writing. Before sunrise, the guest checks out with a printed folio and 0 adjustments. He wants the record clean. At 6:18 a.m., he meets the Director of Operations in a small back office for a last 5-minute review. The incident file shows each control now live. Dual authorization prompts have fired 3 times and blocked 2 misplaced attempts. Intercom auto archive shows green. Projector mirroring requires a manager badge and reason text. Comp inventory remains frozen until the 14th day. He signs the nightly digest with initials and a time. No flourish, just a mark. The board packet is ready. 4 sections and an appendix. Incident summary with timestamps. Findings and policy citations. Actions taken mapped to terminate freeze log. Forward plan with training and audits. The appendix contains screenshots of the PMS audit, intercom clip hashes, and the overbook report. He asks finance to add a small metric line next week. Cost avoided by preventing non-compliant overrides. The number will be quiet and persuasive. Regional leadership dials in at 702 for a rollout call. He frames the work in 10 sentences. Guaranteed reservations are not flexible inventory. VIP handling must not collide with assignment. ID handling follows state law and company policy without exception. Reallocated requires dual authorization with clause citation and overbook context. Intercom audio archives by default. Terminals cannot mirror to public displays without a badge and reason. Monthly override audits expand to sister properties. Recognition is built in for fact keepers. Training ties to credentials. Standards are how we protect dignity and revenue at once. Region agrees and schedules their own audits. Compliance presents a short heat map across properties using the last 90 days of override patterns. 2 hotels show mild clustering in late windows. 1 shows no pattern. They will visit those lobbies as mystery guests next Thursday. The plan is not punitive, it is preventative. The lesson from last night scales into a template that removes guesswork during pressure. PR proposes language for external contingencies. If asked, the property will state that a reservation conflict occurred, that systems preserved evidence, that staff access was limited pending review, and that training is underway. No names, no drama. He approves a 10-second version for on-camera use if someone tries to make a spectacle in the lobby again. Staff are reminded that lawful recording in public spaces is not to be challenged. The tone is steady and factual. HR reports that the supervisor submitted a written response overnight. It acknowledges overrides and claims confusion about VIP expectations. Legal prepares the termination packet and notes the right to respond has been exercised. The file remains precise. Overrides without overbook. Unsupported VIP. Derogatory label. Attempted ID hold contrary to policy and law. Access will be ended at the end of the day, pending final signatures. He does not add comment. He does not need to. Jamal meets operations for a development check. He has completed 2 tasks from the shift lead checklist and has 1 left. He has a cross-training slot tomorrow at housekeeping to understand room status codes end to end. He will sit with night audit for 30 minutes to see how the ledger closes. The goal is context, not rank. He signs a simple development plan and returns to the desk. The plan is a page, long and measurable. Engineering completes 1 last safeguard. If a user selects reallocated and the overbook count is 0, the modal not only blocks the action, but displays the specific clause number that applies to guaranteed reservations. It also forces the user to type the clause they believe applies if they still want to proceed. An empty box cannot be submitted. Training turns this into a drill, so the language becomes muscle memory. He takes 1 more slow lap through public space. A late checkout request is resolved with a policy citation and options. A guest filming the floral display gets a nod and no interference. Security positions remain at the perimeter, not at the desk. The policy binder at the front is open to the section on equivalent accommodation. Someone has highlighted a paragraph that matters. Equal or higher category. Documented. Approved. No exceptions. At 9:10, he leaves the building through the same door he entered. No handshake line, no announcement. The value of the night sits in the system that now resists small power games. He sends a last note to the director. The 2 rails are dignity and accuracy. When in doubt, pick the rule that protects both. He copies compliance and the regional VP. 3 minutes later, the digest lands in their inboxes with the figures he asked for. On the way to the car, he answers 1 text from a board member. Is this a PR risk? He replies with 2 sentences. The best PR is a standard that works when no one is looking. We have it in place. The message ends there. By noon, the property runs on muscle memory. Terminate where access violates standard. Freeze privileges while evidence is reviewed. Log every action with immutable flags. The words sound clinical, but they hold a simple promise. No guest will be turned into a prop for someone's small authority. The fix is not emotional. It is architectural. He does not plan a victory post. He does not call the lobby back to watch a reveal. The reveal already happened, line by line, in the audit trail projected on a wall and stored for review. The hotel reads that language now and speaks it back. He steps into the car and the door closes with a soft click. Another property waits on his calendar next week. The work repeats because standards only matter when they survive habit. The system keeps writing. By midweek, the property moves with a steadier cadence. The second research session fills on time, and the last test scores post to the credential system by 1040 a.m. Two attendants miss the threshold on the first pass and are scheduled for a one-on-one coaching block with a training lead from a sister property. No one loses face at the desk. The intervention happens in a quiet room with a practice terminal and the policy library open. When the session ends, both pass. Logins reactivate with a timestamp and a short note. Skills tied to access. That rule is now felt in the hands. Finance closes the reconciliation on the two unsupported non-revenue stays. Contact attempts bounce at the personal email domain. The ledger treats them as benefits extended without authorization. Reimbursement is coded to the proper internal account, and a notice is sent to the regional controller. It is not punishment dressed as policy. It is accounting that respects the boundary between personal favors and inventory that belongs to a business. Legal finishes the termination packet after the response window. The decision stands, the letter cites the clauses and the timeline. HR conducts an exit meeting in a private office with a neutral observer. Access had been locked since the night of the incident, and now the separation is complete. The property is not cold about it. The language is firm and plain. An action that violated standards created harm, and the response is to protect both people and process. The record records only what matters. Date, time, policy, outcome. Compliance finishes the first set of mystery guest visits across the sister properties. Results come back clean in 2 lobbies and a little noisy in 1. At that location, an agent tried to move a late arrival with reallocations, and the hard stop blocked the attempt. The second manager read the warning aloud, cited the clause, and canceled. The digest that night carries a single line: control prevented a bad decision. That is how rail becomes a habit. The hotel runs an internal tabletop drill for overbooked nights. The flowchart, drafted by operations, is taped inside the back office door and mirrored to a shared drive. The drill covers what can never be displaced and what can be moved, and how to document an equivalent accommodation when overbook is greater than 0. When the timer runs out, the team has written every step into the PMS with clause numbers and approvals attached. There are no speeches, the drill ends, and lunch service begins. Jamal completes his cross-training rotation with housekeeping and night audit. He can now read a room status line end to end, from clean, inspected to blocked for work order. He sits with the night auditor to watch the ledger close and sees how a missed code forces manual fixes at dawn. He begins to anticipate the problem before it arrives. Operations adds a note to his file, ready for permanent shift lead upon completion of the 30-day plan. The note is not a promise. It is a path with dates and measurable boxes. PR refreshes the internal memo and asks managers to read once more before the weekend. Lawful recording in public spaces is not to be challenged. ID handling follows state law. Guaranteed reservations are not flexible inventory. Dual authorization and clause citation are live. The closing paragraph keeps the theme. Dignity is the first metric of luxury. Staff sign, not because a signature performs virtue, but because the habit of reading policy aloud makes it harder to forget under pressure. Guest feedback trends hold steady. Comments mention a calm desk during a storm of delayed flights. The average check-in time ticks down by a handful of seconds. A new comment appears in the morning poll. Thank you for citing policy when I asked why my room type had to shift. I felt informed, not dismissed. That line matters more than any press note. The board packet lands on schedule with the appendix of screenshots and hashes. The chair replies with 2 words: well handled. The guest reads the note in the backseat of a car between meetings and archives it. He does not post. He does not tell a story about a story. The audit already told itself in logs and signatures. Before he moves on, he asks the director to place one more item on the calendar. A quarterly session with a civil rights and service quality group that will sit with frontline staff to talk about bias at the point of service and how to keep language factual under stress. The property will open the door to an outside partner, not for optics, but to keep the team honest and supported. The invite goes out, and the first date lands 2 weeks from now. By Friday, the hotel looks like a hotel again. Projector slides are neutral, intercom chirps are routine status checks. The policy binder at the desk is dog-eared where it should be, at guaranteed reservations and ID handling. The night that tried to bend the rails is now a line item in a training deck, an engineering change, a finance recovery, and a personnel decision. The most visible part is quiet. A guest hands over an ID and a reservation. A key is issued. No one becomes a prop for someone else's small authority. The guest does not linger for thanks. He leaves a folded note at the bell stand for Jamal and walks out to the curb with his own bag. The note is a sentence. Facts first, policy next. People always. The door closes behind him without ceremony, the standard stays, and the building keeps breathing in rhythm. The system keeps writing. The week closes with numbers instead of noise. Recert attendance hits 100%. 2 coaching blocks completed and passed. Dual authorization prompts fired 9 times, blocked 4 attempts, and approved 5 with proper clause citations and second logins. Intercom auto archive shows a clean chain. Projector mirroring logged 0, public terminal shares. Comp inventory remains frozen through day 14, and finance posts the reimbursement entries for the 2 unsupported stays. The file reads like a blueprint, not a story. Operations meets the guest for a brief exit review in a quiet office. The playbook for busy nights is printed, laminated, and uploaded. Overbook checks first. Guaranteed reservations cannot be displaced. VIP handling requires event ID or vendor record before any move. Equivalent accommodations must be equal or higher category, documented, and approved. The admin console now displays those sentences inside the modal. A staff member who tries to wing it sees the rule before they can click again. The rails teach. HR confirms the personnel outcome. The supervisor's separation is finalized after the response window. The letter cites policy and law, not character. Jamal's development path is set. He will serve as permanent shift lead at the end of 30 days if he continues to meet the checklist and passes a practical exam. His file holds the case number and a commendation for factual reporting under pressure. It is not hero worship. It is how a company tells its people which behaviors move the place forward. Compliance widens the audit template to the region. Quarterly polls will check overrides against overbook counts, match reason codes to documentation, and sample intercom archives for misuse. A small team will run mystery guest audits each quarter, rotating days and times to catch the real pattern. The digest format is fixed: counts, clause numbers, approvals, no adjectives. Accuracy is a tone. Legal closes the loop with a memo on ID handling that cites state law and applies across all properties. The memo anchors training and shields staff from pressure. If a guest is asked to surrender identification without law enforcement and an incident report, the staff can point to the memo and the policy binder, not to a personal preference. The memo lives on the shared drive and in a sleeve at the front desk. It is read out loud at pre-shift until the language is muscle memory. PR delivers a final internal note that never leaves the building. It thanks teams for returning to standard without turning the lobby into a stage. It reminds staff that guests who record in public spaces are not a problem to be solved. It repeats a line that is settled into this property's spine. Luxury is the feeling that rules protect you, not that someone's power can silence you. The note ends there. The guest asks for one more calendar block. A quarterly roundtable with a civil rights and service quality partner who will sit with frontline teams to practice bias checks at the point of service. Roleplay is built around devices the staff actually use. A scanner beep, a PMS modal, an intercom chirp. The drill teaches a reflex: verify, cite, preserve, speak only to facts. Staff leave the room with a checklist card that fits behind a badge. In a pinch, they can read it out loud and keep language inside the lane. Before leaving, the guest walks the lobby one last time. A late arrival slides a driver's license and a reservation across the marble. The agent scans, reads the policy line under the glass, and issues a key. A child asks about the pool. A flight crew laughs at a text about a gate change. Security stays at the perimeter. The projector shows neutral art. The desk binder is open to guaranteed reservations and ID handling, dog-eared in the right places. The building is doing what it was built to do. He meets the director at the door and hands over a slim folder for the board. It contains the incident summary, the findings with citations, the actions under Terminate freeze log, and the forward plan. On the top page, a line he uses when he needs to remind a room why this all matters. Dignity and accuracy protect people, and revenue at once. The director nods and tucks the folder under his arm. There is no speech and no last look at the camera. The outcome is visible in routine. A suite assigned without friction. A system that resists soft gatekeeping. A front desk that knows which clause to read when a bad habit tries to return. The story never needed a hero. It needed a standard and a record. He steps outside into ordinary air. The car door closes. Another property will get this template next week because standards scale or they fail. Inside, a bell tone rings, a guest gets a key, and the log adds a quiet line that means more than any applause. Service delivered, evidence preserved, people respected, terminate where access violates the rule, freeze benefits while facts are reviewed, log everything. If you are watching this to learn how quiet power works, take the same playbook with you. Verify before you decide. Put policy between people and pressure. Build rails so the right move is the easy move. Then let the system keep writing.